In the name of Allah, the most beneficent, the most merciful. Worthy Chief Guest, Professor Dr. Anis Ahmed, Vice Chancellor, Rifa International University, Islamabad. Honorable Director General Namal, Brigadier Syed Nadir Ali. Honorable Pro-Rector Academics, Professor Dr. Amir Ejaz. Worthy Keynote Speaker, Professor Dr. Caroline Miles. Respected Pro-Rectors, Deans, Directors, HODs, distinguished guests from academia, faculty members, and dear students. Assalamu alaikum and a very good morning. I, Dr. Sana Tariq, welcome you all on this one-day international conference on the spatial turn in literature and linguistics. The conference has been organized by the Faculty of Arts and Humanities. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll start the proceedings of the conference with the recitation from the Holy Quran. I'd request Muhammad Ezaz Ehsan to please come on stage for the recitation.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والتين والزيتون وطور سينين وهذا البلد الأمين لقد خلقنا الإنسان في أحسن تقويم ثم رددناه أسفل سافلين إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات فلهم أجر غير ممنون فما يكذبك بعد بالدين أليس الله بأحكم الحاكمين. By the fig and the olive, and by this secure city of Mecca, we have certainly created humans in the best of stature. Then we return them to the lowest of the low, except for those who believe and do righteous deeds, for they will have a reward uninterrupted. What then now causes you to belie the judgment? Is not Allah the most just of the judges? Sadaqallahu al-Azim.
Jazakallah. Landscape and spatiality have become increasingly significant in all disciplines of humanities and social sciences. A richer and more contextualized understanding of the field will make us appreciate this conference more. We now present to you a short visual clip about the conference theme. The visual will highlight the significance of this topic in the contemporary global context. Please enjoy the visual on mediating psychogeographies. The voiceover has been done by Dr. Rabia Amir.
In these environmentally informed times, studying landscape and spatiality has become increasingly significant in all disciplines of humanities and social sciences, especially when we see migrations, forced evictions, and a constant flux of human societies becoming naturalized phenomena. The term spatial turn refers to a change of direction towards the study of spatial imaginaries in narrative media, and literary texts. Mediated through the theoretical and methodological development of research in language and literature, this spatial turn helps us study the assimilation of landscapes, cityscapes, natural geography, urban geography, mapping, and transnational flows. Seminal spatial theorist Edward Sawyer defined the spatial turn in humanities and social sciences as a response to a long-standing ontological and epistemological bias that privileged time over space in all the human sciences, including spatial disciplines like geography and architecture. This means that until the 20th century, academic disciplines of the humanities prioritized time, that is, historicity over space or place. But now it has become imperative to foreground the study of natural and urban spaces, of local landscapes, cityscapes, transnational flows, and other aspects of local spatiality embedded in the local rather than the global. A recent ongoing project of the British Council entitled Walking Cities may be cited as an example. Studying local spatiality in literature and filmic narratives is therefore perhaps an effective means for the non-Western world to free itself from the pervasive grand narratives and tell its own stories. In this respect, this turn is of essence for the growth of the discipline of humanities in Pakistan, because we need to not only tell our stories based in local communities and cities, but also be able to develop methodologies and theoretical frameworks to help appraise these psychogeographies.
Speaking of space and literature is a very inspirational concept. To share more on this, may I please request Honorable Dr. Mohammad Uzair, Dean Faculty of Arts and Humanities, to please come for the introduction of the conference and welcome address. Please welcome.
In the name of Allah, the most beneficent, the most merciful, Honorable Chief Guest, DG Namal, dear colleagues and students, Assalamu alaikum and a very good morning. On behalf of Faculty of Arts and Humanity, I welcome you all to the inaugural session of one-day international conference on the spatial turn in literature and linguistics. We are grateful to the Honorable Rector, Major General Muhammad Jafar, to have provided us the opportunity to organize this conference. We thank the worthy Director General, Brigadier Syed Nadir Ali, and Pro-Rector Academics, Professor Dr. Amir Ejaz, for their support and encouragement. We extend our heartfelt gratitude to the Vice Chancellor, Rifa University, Islamabad, Professor Dr. Anis Ahmed, for gracing the occasion. Dignitaries, ladies and gentlemen, universities are the places of constructive debates and creative dialogues that help us determine our directions regarding latest trends in thought. All developing societies need to develop intellectual capital to move on and link up with contemporary, cultural, civilizational, and academic concerns so that they know how to locate themselves at vantage positions. Landscape and spatiality have now become increasingly significant in all disciplines of humanities and social sciences. There is a revival of interest in spatial aspect of literary and linguistic knowledge production. Therefore, spatial turn is an important dimension for discussion that may be seen contemporary, mediatic, literary text, language, and culture. It is time to extend our literary and linguistic paradigms to bring landscapes, cityscapes, natural and urban geographies in their purview to further our research in language and literature. With this in view, the conference aims to bring together scholars and academics from across Pakistan and abroad in order to create a multidisciplinary space for sharing ideas of speciality. It will provide an opportunity not only to introduce this significant turn in global academia to Pakistani scholars, but also trigger growth of an emerging field in Pakistan that needs to be explored and developed further. Keeping in view the trends shifting towards a non-Eurocentric approach to language and literature, this conference is likely to help in the shift that is direly needed in humanities departments all over Pakistan to adopt a more interdisciplinary approach towards research. The thematic focus of the conference broadly includes city imaginaries and the role of urban experiences in shaping idiosyncratic spaces, literary or filmed psychogeographies, embodied spaces, subversive spaces and spaces of dissent, metrolingualism, and the future of world Englishes. I'm sure that our scholars will benefit from the discussion by the luminaries in terms of generating new ideas and bringing clarity to their concepts. In the end, once again, I would like to say thank you all for your presence in today's conference. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, for the keynote address, we have with us Professor Dr. Caroline Miles. She has joined us online from the United States. Dr. Caroline is a professor of English in the Department of Literatures and Cultural Studies at the University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley. She also serves as the coordinator for Global Border Studies for the Office of International Programs and Partnerships. She teaches American and global literature courses and humanities interdisciplinary courses on global borders and has published widely on the American South, the Global South, and most recently on the Texas-Mexico border. She is also a co-PI on an NSF grant titled Geographies of Insecurity, funding research for 3 years at UTRGV, Texas State, and George Washington University on human mobility. She is a recipient of the prestigious University of Texas System Regents Outstanding Teaching Award. Dr. Caroline will speak on the topic Absent Maps, Conflict, and the Reformative Future of Mapping and Spatial Imaginaries. May I please request our worthy keynote speaker, Professor Dr. Caroline Miles, for the keynote address.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me all right? Yep.
Yes, we can.
Okay. So good morning. I assume it's morning for most here. It's a little later here in the US. Thank you so much for inviting me to be part of this conference. I'm honored. And as Rabia said, the title of my talk is Absent Maps, Conflict, and the Reformative Future of Mapping and Spatial Imaginaries. So I don't know if you want to put the first slide, Rabia, or as you like. There we go. So I just want to start. Many postmodern literary texts influenced by the spatial turn demonstrate the significance and problems of both maps and also the absence of mapping. They deal with what maps tell us about human emotions and behaviors, dictate representations and understandings of space and place, and also how in turn those representations generate meaning, connotative signifiers, and motivate human action. From a postmodern standpoint, as Jordan Savage puts it nicely, land is only land. It has no intrinsic value other than those which are assigned to it externally and according to an artificially developed human code. In many cases, as many postmodern geographers, architects, and theorists have demonstrated, space and place are manipulated to serve capitalist and colonial gains. Land is named and represented by maps to serve those interests. All the Pretty Horses, a literary text by Cormac McCarthy, demonstrates this well. The main characters, John Grady Cole, his friend Lacey Rawlins, and a boy called Jimmy Blevins, focus obsessively with moving south, first to the US-Mexico border, and then, once they get over the border, further south. Once Cole finds out he can't run his dead grandfather's ranch, the pages of the novel are saturated in references to moving south, linking from the get-go this movement south with right to ownership and reacquisition. As the boys head to the Texas-Mexico border, it is a boundary that the novel complicates from the start, immediately invoking an opposition between reality and imagination, a boundary that marks where American space begins, some romantic true origin, and at the same time one that reminds us of how the space of borders in particular represent histories of violent conflict and acquisition. While on the one hand, the border is definitive, on what lies north is by legal and political definition America, just as Cole's ranch by legal definition belongs to his family. At the same time, the American land Cole's family ranch stands on denotes for Cole both nation and ghost of nation. The wind blowing out of the west is red, and the ancient road shaped before him like a dream of the past, where the painted ponies and the riders of that lost nation came down out of north with their faces chalked. When he turns south, he dismounts and stands like a man come to the end of something, but he thinks of the warriors who go rattling past with their Stone Age tools of war, signaling softly in blood and longing across the plains to Mexico. These vivid images of Native Americans capture the way boundaries and borders shift violently through history, and how framing the creation of national economic gain in narratives of romantic exploration and American exceptionalism is an act of denial and forgetting, one of obscuring the violence and transgression entailed in America's acquisition and naming of space and land. Maps and the lack of mapping occupies a central role in this text. The map Cole and Rawlins take with them to Mexico is produced by an American oil company and leaves Mexico entirely to the reader's imagination. Rawlins looked at it, and he looked south towards the gap in the low hills. There were roads and rivers and towns on the American side of the map as far south as the Rio Grande, and beyond that was all white. It don't show nothing down there, does it? Says Rawlins. No, you reckon it ain't never been mapped? Says Cole. When Rawlins comes back with another map, he traces their route with his finger and says, there ain't shit down there. The map invokes how in the national imagination of the United States, especially one governed by the corporate economic interests evoked by the oil company, anything that lies beyond the American national boundary exists as a blank slate, an other either to detract from the violent remapping of the past or to be imagined and mapped in the future according to its own desires. As Weiss reminds us in Violence and Borders, the mapper's code for what is not contained, from Indian scouts leading mountain men through hunting and trapping grounds, the Lewis and Clark expeditions, to the construction of fences and walls, maps record the processes of the frontier's continual change. As he points out, the oil company's mapping of Mexico and South as empty space echoes how Frederick Jackson Turner characterizes the empty space beyond the frontier as becoming American only with progressive advance. The objective of the transformative advance was not what was beyond the line, but how the space behind the frontier boundary became transformed or Americanized. The land beyond was empty and thus was not recreated, but created for the first time. This ideology of America as origin and as having been created and named for the first time out of nothing wipes out the nations and people eradicated as new boundaries and borders are imagined, drawn, and justified. As Jordan Savage says, in Texas, oil is the ultimate symbol of wealth. We see how the map is controlled by the oil company who control the money, and the map controls how Rawlins conceives of land and space. The boundary between America and blank space dramatizes the relationship between capitalism and the nation state. The oil company cordons off oil-rich land and then protects it by giving it a national identity. Savage also points out that this map, which defines the known home territory of the US against the Mexican other, also enacts one of Marcus Doyle's principles. What mattered to modern human geography was the principle of separation, and not at all whether or not the gap in the order of things could be successfully crossed. As long as difference is separation, there is no problem in working out where things are. For Savage and Doyle, mapping is an instrument of separation, othering, and consolidating capitalist and nation-state interests. As the boys continue south, they continue to perceive Mexico as an undefined territory. You might want to go back one slide, Rabia. Yeah, there we go. As the boys continue south, they continue to perceive Mexico as an undefined territory, an other for them to project themselves and their desires onto. When the boys get taken in by a family for the night, Cole watches the ranch owner's daughter carefully riding her horse. Mexico becomes a projection of Cole's romantic imagination and his desire for possession. I do have eyes for the daughter, Cole says. You got eyes for the spread, Rawlins responds. I don't know, Cole says. I ain't thought about it. Sure you ain't, Rawlins replies. As the boys' fictional narrative of Mexico gets replaced by a nightmarish quagmire of violence and terror, the American boys' misunderstanding and disrespecting of the social and political complexities of Mexico generates conflict, violence, and death. Blevins is executed for shooting someone in an attempt to steal his horseback, and Cole's romantic desire for the ranch owner's daughter lands both he and Rawlins in jail, where they have to fight for their lives every day. Cole's desire to take what is not his and what he doesn't understand, and the ultimate taking of it, the daughter's virginity, turns his imperialist romantic venture into one that leads to a treacherous end, one strangely echoing the plight of many migrants in America and collapsing imperialist and migrant into one another. While the American maps and the boys' romantic fantasies implicate imperialist impulses and the erasing of the other, the Gothic images point to how both imperialist and migrant are defined by movement across borders motivated by dreams and economics, even as one is legitimized and the other criminalized by the dominant narrative. Like every colonizer and imperialist, the boys come to find out that the new space they encounter in Mexico is neither nothing nor what they imagine it to be, and they themselves become responsible for the violence they encounter. The border is neither running through and against nothing, as their maps project, or one that is keeping violence out of the United States. These are both narratives denying American responsibility for violence and conflict associated with the history of the Texas-Mexico border. If American national narratives of the border insinuate that transgression is characterized by migrant movement from south to north and walls are necessary to keep these people out, McCarthy's novel suggests otherwise and reminds us of America's own national transgressions in imperialist conquest, defining the border as the problem where fences and walls are necessary to keep out violence and immigrants, buries the real imperialist and exclusionary national impulses that created the border and national space in the first place, and detracts from a history of shifting borders and violent transgressions that has characterized America's national and imperialist history from the beginning. The American mapping of Mexico in the 1992 novel All the Pretty Horses is echoed but gets shifted in the more recent
Can I? She got disconnected. So the text is in front of you. You just keep reading. She's joining back. She's going to end her presentation shortly. So can I just? Students, if you can just look at the slides, I hope that you've got an idea that as University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley is in the south of Texas, and they have the Mexico border closer to them. So she's talking about the spaces and the borders and the problems at the Mexico border, right? So she's trying to get back and if you just look at, and I hope you understand that can anybody tell me what is the title of the book that she is referring to again and again? Just a minute. Yeah, All the Pretty Horses, right? So the title itself has got that implication that all the pretty horses that are associated with Mexico and all that, and the romanticizing needs to be shed off, and the reality needs to be faced, right? So let's see if she's back. Otherwise, we'll move on, all right? Yeah. Because like you know, right? 5 minutes. नहीं सर वो WhatsApp में She's there. She's there. It's okay. Otherwise, we can move ahead. Yes, sir. Caroline,
Yes, so I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I don't know what happened.
okay. Can we move to this conclusion slide now?
Yes, well, I'll just summarize. So the Vaquero is marginalized to the US-Mexico border. However, in reality, in history, the Vaquero was somebody that worked and traveled right to the border of Canada. And so it's an example of quarantining something that makes Americans uncomfortable, which is the centrality of migration in American history, to quarantine that at the border to repress it. And then I moved on to talk about the significance of GIS. I'm actually the grant that I am, the 3-year grant is going to be using GIS to map migrant journeys. And I think this is very important. It has a lot of potential for transformation, for transforming current narratives of migrants. And without this information, migrant experience exists as a blank space, like the map of Mexico on the oil map. And then I just wanted to say that even though I've been focusing on the US-Mexico border, we can apply many of these ideas to various conflict zones around the world, including Palestine and Kashmir. Wiseman's book about Palestine here on the slide is extraordinary. If you're not familiar with this book, I would strongly recommend it. Do I have another minute or so?
Yes.
Okay.
You have a minute. Yes.
Okay. When people are put on the map, it's harder for them to be ignored, mistreated, and empathize with. So it's not just that maps are tools of colonial and capitalist powers. When people are, particularly when people are mapped and their experiences are mapped through GIS and tools such as this, it can have a powerful reformative and resistance effect. So as said there, am I still on there? Yes. Okay, so yes, in Hollow Land, Wiseman analyzes Palestine, and he says mapping has until recently been almost exclusively associated with mechanisms of colonial power. However, since the start of the Intifada, it has increasingly become more commonly associated with attempts to oppose and disrupt it. Although at the beginning of the Second Intifada, Edward Said was correct to suggest that the organization of the occupied territories was largely hidden from the Palestinians and their supporters, which gave the occupation forces a clear advantage. In recent years, a spatial turn in the discourse surrounding the occupation has helped extend our political understanding of the conflict to a physical geographical reality and led to the production of a wide range of maps drawn and distributed. He goes on to tell how such maps and posting them on the internet, as well as producing other forms of visual knowledge, threaten the status quo by allowing us to access a different understanding of political issues. And I'll just end, although I'm not an expert on Kashmir by any means, but just to say that it seems to me for a solution to the relentless conflict and suffering there, the space of Kashmir must also be remapped and imagined differently. As long as it is seen as a space of ideological battle or a political space, nothing will change. The space of Kashmir must be reimagined and remapped in some other ways. Rabier's research and work, in my opinion, is an important contribution to this reimagining of Kashmir and Palestine using the lens of literature, film, and a post-colonial environmental ethic. I will end by saying that interdisciplinary work connecting the humanities, the power of stories and narratives with mapping and GIS tools also has the potential
Caroline, sorry to interrupt.
reimagining.
So, okay. Yes, please wind it up. Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm finished.
Thank you so much, Dr. Caroline. It was wonderful hearing you. Thank you.
Yes,
Ladies
I cut it a bit short.
Sorry, we missed you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for having me. I'm sorry about the technical issue.
No problem. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, it's our pleasure to have with us today Very Honorable Professor Dr. Anis Ahmed as our chief guest. Dr. Anis is Vice Chancellor, Rifa International University, Islamabad. But most importantly, he's very renowned social scientist. So it is indeed a great opportunity to have him here with us in this conference. Please welcome Very Honorable Professor Dr. Anis Ahmed.
Thank you very much. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalam ala khatimil anbiya. Honorable Director General, Brigadier Sahib, Honorable Dean, Faculty of Social Sciences, Honorable Professor Amir Ejaz Sahib, and Chief Organizer Dr. Muhammad Uzair, faculty members, I take it as a unique honor to be here this morning and share with you very briefly, and keeping in mind the time constraint, some of my ideas with you. First of all, I must greet the organizing committee for selecting this topic, which indicates that We in Pakistan sometimes think critically and try to come out of our cocoons in which we have been living for over 75 years. When we talk about any social change or development, it's very natural to understand how we look on ground realities. The spatial turn refers to essentially a shift in thinking of that Eurocentric mind which did not reside in Europe alone, but which was systematically proliferated in the mind and soul and body of all those who were their subjects globally. The rise of imperialism of Europe and colonization was not confined to political oppression and dividing people based on a Eurocentric vision of race, ethnicity, and language. But it was essentially a matter of transformation of mind and soul. And therefore, if you go to any library and try to find out how European sociologists, anthropologists, with their binoculars and cameras came down to other land and look at the other from their own perspective. The other was always inferior intellectually, culturally, emotionally, and even religiously. I'll not go in details. All of you are, alhamdulillah, educated persons. Go and see from E.V. Tyler till Claude Lévi-Strauss. Go and see Paul Rodin and many others who have gone to other lands and cultures, and then try to see how they look at it, analyze it, and tell you about their existence. Just titles of the books. The heathens, the soul of the primitive, the African mind, the so-and-so tribe. Every single title of the book is loaded with that pride of white man who thought all others are subhuman beings. And consequently, the literature, which is a reflection of aspirations of people, I was forced to read how British culture from Charles Dickens till modern times looks on life. I was told to understand that London Bridge is falling down. I was told that if you want to check what time it is, then you calculate by 5 plus or 5 minus GMT. When I was asked from where you come, I was taught to describe myself as Southeast Asian or South Asian. South Asia of what? London and Paris. Every single aspect of life and living was essentially a matter of exporting a Eurocentric vision, Eurocentric definition of human being, society, and culture. If you could speak fluently English language or French, you are a civilized person. To the extent natives like Nepal or like Bin Nabi or Franz Fanon, they had to write in a language of the colonizer to get recognition. I have met Bin Nabi personally, who was contemporary of Franz Fanon and who took the lead in coming up with the concept of colonizability. What he means by that is, it's not difficult to colonize, but it's more difficult to feel proud of being colonized. And unfortunately, the colonizer left us with this pride of being colonized. I must look for a material woven in Manchester, not Faisalabad. I should have second-hand ideas. If any of the Western writer has used a term, I must try to find out how I can use it frequently to impress on people I am fully aware of modern trends. Now, since you are dealing with literature and that relates with how you have a narrative in social sciences and humanities particularly, the whole narrative that was built was a result of a malaise of Western social sciences, and that malaise is reductionism. Therefore, if I had to find out about society, I had no choice but to go for Weber, Talcott, Parson, and try to find out how society develops. If I had to know what's human psyche, I had no choice but to start with McDougall and get down to Sigmund Freud, Carl Jung, B.F. Skinner, and Erich Fromm, and just look into what they are saying and accept that as truth. Consequently, my profile of my patient in clinical psychology has to match with the profile of patients of Sigmund Freud in his 3 volumes. And that means it's not just a matter of just knowledge, but it's a matter of understanding, which Delphi and Collingwood addressed, Delphi particularly, and later on Gadamer and Paul Ricoeur and many others who try to look into not only what are so-called ground realities, but what is the relationship between parts and wholes, Gadamer particularly. And therefore, those who are studying literature can never come out of this cocoon. They are imprisoned in those ideas, analysis, and methodology. Some of them also from the West question those, Karl Popper, for example, or Thomas Kuhn. When I read Kuhn, I was glad to see that many of his ideas for paradigm change question the very assumptions of social and human sciences in the West. But how many of Pakistani intellectuals try to come out of this intellectual slavery? And how many of them feel proud when they quote someone from the West, may that be Huntington, Fouquet, or any other one. I think what's needed is a kind of paradigm shift which was used for the first time by Kohn in 60s. But this paradigm shift has to be different. It has to be dealing with ground realities, because your concept and theme is a spatial turn. We cannot disregard that reality. But what the colonizer wants us to do is we go down to earth, but we get fragmentalized. We get segmented. We become localized. Therefore, the concept of indigenous culture, and in that, multidisciplinary approach was introduced in the West. That you divide the people in their local culture, tell them this is your identity, so they lose their national identity. They lose their own cultural heritage. And that again is a strategy very cleverly developed by the former colonizer. What needs to be done is development of critical thinking and reconsideration of the basic assumptions. What is concept of man? What is origin of society? What is future destiny of humanity? And unless we address these issues from a new perspective, not from the Western social science and humanities perspective, I don't think we can make any progress. A nation which is nourished on borrowed ideas, second-hand concepts, can never be a leader. You have to have your own values. You have to have your own personality, your own self-understanding, your own values. And unfortunately, the social science, since Weber has taken an dogmatic approach of what they call value neutral sciences. Value neutrality means what Comte said, that age of science and positivism has taken over, and the age of Christianity, which he calls mythology, is gone. And with that also religion has gone. And with that also values have gone. Therefore, the term, this is traditional culture, this is modern culture, this is postmodern culture, this is post Christianity culture, and so on and so forth. All those terms indicate very clearly that superiority and pride of a racist mind, which has been the essence of Western social science and humanities. Therefore, if we want to progress as a nation, we should master English language, but not English concepts, not English culture, not borrowed concepts, but our own concepts. Lastly, when we talk about a new paradigm, it means there is need to develop a holistic approach and not a micro centered approach where you disintegrate society into individuals. But you try to find out how these individuals are linked with the whole. You look not only on the psychological, economic aspect, or political aspect, but you look on the whole human being. In that whole human being, his or her spirituality can never be neglected. Then you have a human being who is not complete. In our case, it's our values which are not local, which are not Arabian, which are not Turkish, which are not Pakistani, but our values are universal and divine. On that count, Islam is the only faith that can challenge all cultures which are born from social constructs. But Islam came to change social constructs, to bring a new society and not imposing those social norms which were known in 7th century. Therefore, our values that come from the Quran and Sunnah of compassion, of kindness, of love, of empathy, of sacrifice, of understanding the other person as the person is, not as you want to see him. These are the values that create objectivity. We must come out of this subjective world which we embrace for 2 centuries and is still keeping it on. Look into any of the textbooks of undergrad programs in English language. How do you find the caricatures? How do you find the conversation, the text? Does that reflect any of your own values? Or every single thing, facial features, even cartoons, everything imported, borrowed, imposed, so you are brainwashed. You remain as slaves. Paradigm shift means we come out of that understanding in social sciences and humanities, our literature, our poetry, our drama. Everything has to reflect our values. Without that, it will remain a foreign imposition. Thank you very much. May Allah bless you all.
Thank you very much, sir. It was very enlightening and inspiring for all of us. Now, may I please request Honorable Director General Namal, Brigadier Syed Nader Ali, to please come for the vote of thanks.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Honorable Dr. Anis Ahmed Saab, Vice Chancellor, Rifa International University, Islamabad. Worthy prorectors, deans, faculty members, and my dear students, Assalamu alaikum and a very good morning. It's been a pleasure here and listening to our honorable keynote speaker from United States, Dr. Caroline. And obviously, I would say, we are blessed here that we are sitting here and listening to Dr. Anis Ahmed Saab, who is a role model, who is an intellect, who is a scholar, whatever we say, but words are short of it, whatever, mashallah, Dr. Saab's credentials are. Ladies and gentlemen, this session basically is the opening session, which marks the beginning of the conference on spatial terms in literature and linguistics, for which we humbly welcome all the participants who will be coming here and addressing our students and obviously our teachers in various sessions organized till evening today. Ladies and gentlemen, over the years, NAMAL has made remarkable progress in its academics and research culture. We have tried our best to transform ourselves into a leading institution. With professional excellence and dedication of our teachers and students, obviously, I would say it's the students who matter, their eagerness for learning, Alhamdulillah, we have developed into a dynamic and vibrant higher education institution with prestigious academic and research credentials. However, this is an ongoing journey, and we all are mindful that it is challenging, and there are lots of challenges which lie ahead, and we have to work hard constantly. Ladies and gentlemen, this conference will provide a platform to a wide array of scholars, researchers, and the teachers to deal with important interaction of cultural, social, temporal, and spatial domains, both in literature and linguistics. I am sure students and policymakers will equally benefit from the insightful ideas and findings of today's discourse, which most of our intellectuals will be sharing with you. It's easier than done. Dr. Saab had made some recommendations and highlighted certain inadequacies in our curriculum also. But I feel that with the type of leadership we have in terms of the teachers who are sitting in the front rows and the future leadership which is there, the course correction has to be done. We know what are the challenges, both in spatial domain or any other domain which we are talking about. There were some insightful thoughts given by Dr. Caroline, and she tried to make some relevance with our region also when she talked about the Kashmir issue. But I say beyond Kashmir, we have something related to our Western Front also. Whether we are looking at the migrations in Syria nowadays, but we have been, in your lifetime also, in our lifetime also, we have seen a lot of migration from Afghanistan side also. We must be mindful of that. And that's, I think, something which you, being the future researchers and scholars, must dig into it. Lives of our Afghan brothers who came here 4 decades back, and what are the issues both in terms of spatial domain and both for linguistics and literature. Please carry out research on that also, because it's very important to find out what's going on in Mexico-US border, but it's more important what's going on Afghanistan and Pakistan border. I hope you will do that. Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, that is what all intellectual engagements are all about. They primarily aim at bringing together researchers and scholars to exchange and share their experiences, new ideas, and discuss the practical challenges in diverse academic domains. I'm sure the 3 consecutive sessions of this international conference will spark new debate for literary and linguistic research in Pakistan at large. Panel discussions and talks by the keynote speakers today would relate to emerging literary and linguistic trends and their subsequent impact on local as well as global world culture. It is the creative differences that always make the difference, whether it happens in our cultural and social debate or in theory. The suggestions and modes of understanding forwarded by the keynote speakers and panel discussions may go a long way towards developing a new understanding of the cultural and social aspects of human existence. Ladies and gentlemen, I once again thank our the chief guest, Professor Dr. Anis Ahmed Saab, and our keynote speaker, Professor Dr. Caroline Miles from the United States. I also like to appreciate the effort made by the Faculty of Arts and Humanities for organizing such a wonderful event in a timely and befitting manner. May Allah guide us and help us all. Ameen. I thank you all for your patience hearing.
Thank you so much, sir, for your kind words. Now I'd request Honorable Director General Namal to please present commemorative shield to the chief guest. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our worthy chief guest. Thank you so much, sir, for gracing the occasion with your presence. Now for the group photograph, may I please request our keynote speakers and organizing team to also join on stage for the group photograph. Thank you all for joining us. We'll start our first academic session at 12 in the same hall. Please remain seated. Let the guests leave. Thank you.
कहना कि ये चलता है लेकिन 12 बजे से पहले पहले वापस आ जाना।
Thank you all for joining us. You're requested to join back at 12 for the first academic session. Thank you.